What's up, trade crew? Welcome back to HVAC R&D, hosted by Rhydon Atzenhoffer. And this week, I'm joined by a fellow member of the HVAC community, also in the middle of a career transition. So let's get it, y'all. From the beginning of this show, I've always said that the trades industry is built on great people with great stories, and I want the trade crew to hear yours. Whether you're in the field turning a wrench or running duct, building a trades empire from your office, working the distribution counter, grinding a sales territory, repping or working for a manufacturer, or anywhere in between, HVAC R&D is the show about the power of conversation, collaboration over competition, and sharing real conversations from every corner of the trades community. And if you've got a story to tell, then I've got a microphone ready for you. So when you're ready, go check out the links to the HVAC R&D podcast questionnaire that are on all social media channels and on the website, and get in touch with me about joining an episode of the show. If this is your first time listening, thank you so much for sharing some time with me. If you're coming back show after show, thank you for helping me continue to make this dream of highlighting our trades a reality. Please make sure to smash the like and subscribe buttons on any and all streaming and social platforms where you follow the show, and please share with your friends and trade crew. If you aren't following the show, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at hvac.rnd, and on LinkedIn, Facebook, and TradeHounds as the HVAC R&D podcast. Please make sure to go check out hvacrnd.com and visit the swag shop for some cool merch and some Cajun Joe's Bayou Spice, and then check out the vendor hub for discounts on BetterHelp, Chirp, Service Titan, and my newest partner, SkillCat. So trade crew, today we're joined by Laura Pitassi. Did I say that right? We'll find out, I guess. A rising star in the commercial HVACR world who's making big moves, transitioning to a new job after just about 6 years, and also taking on the challenge of now getting her plumbing license. She's got a passion for service work, pipe fitting, thread and gas pipe. When she's not in the field, you'll find her competing and eventing with her horse or out snowboarding like it's Cool Borders 3. So let's dive into her journey. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Hi. You were close with my name.
Okay. Gotta tell me how it is.
Pitassi.
Pitassi.
Yes.
So I know you were enjoying a self-imposed vacation for a little bit of this week.
Yeah, a little bit uncomfortable and not expected, but I'm peg-legging around until hopefully the end of this week.
Yes, so Laura found herself in a nice little snowboarding accident over the weekend, it sounds like. So now it's time for some R&R before new job starts on Monday.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm really ready for something new. Bittersweet, but I'm ready.
Aside from snowboarding,
I'm an eventer, so I know a lot of people aren't really into the horse world, but yeah, I'm a crazy horse lady. I've been riding since I was 13 years old. I grew up around harness resources. My parents have a farm in Maine. They're not horse people, but I grew up in Southern Connecticut, and we drive up to Maine every weekend. So I got the bug, man. So eventing is basically it's like a triathlon for horses and riders. So you go in, and it's kind of like golf. You want to go in and you perform a test. You want to try to get the lowest score. And then you go out and you have 2 jumping phases. The first generally is what we call the cross country. So you're going over real obstacles, water, ditches, banks, solid coops, all of that. And it's timed. And then the last phase is your show jumping, which is a lot of what people know, which is you go into the ring and you jump the colorful sticks, and you don't want to get any faults.
The colorful sticks.
Yeah. It's pretty addicting.
No, I can see that. Remind me not to bring my wife if I ever come visit Maine and go to the family farm where the horses are, because I'll never get her to leave. Her favorite thing when we go out west is she loves going horseback riding when we go out west to Arizona or Nevada or anywhere.
It's the best.
If she had a horse, I would probably never see her. She would probably just move out there.
Yeah, my husband learned pretty quickly. When are you going to be home? I'm at the barn. Okay.
It's like, yep, I'll see you when I see you.
Exactly.
if you got to be somewhere, it's okay. You can hang out with the horse, no problem. I know you've been in the field for what, about 6 years. How did
Yeah, July this year is 6 years for me.
yeah? So how did you end up getting into the trades? Did you come through something in high school? Did you have anyone in the family that was doing it, or did you just stumble into it through a career fair? How did that happen?
Very unconventionally. So my father is in construction. Him and my mother built houses for a majority of their careers. They're still doing it to this day. My dad's, oh God, I think my dad's 70 years old now, and he's still building his quote unquote last house. We'll see how that goes.
I
But
definitely know how that goes.
Yep. So he was really into the excavation and the actual like contracting. He had a contracting business for years. And then when I was about 13 years old, we moved full time to Maine. So that was a difficult transition for me just because I was going from basically like a big town, if you will, city to a very small rural area. Um, I, being on the farm like every day, you get resourceful when you want to get things done.
Mhm.
I'm one of six. So I think my dad always thought one of his sons would take over and kind of do stuff. So, even though there was always an interest, it never really took. So I was training horses for a long time, and that was basically what I did on top of bartending and serving. I went to university. I was a commuter student. I really did not know what I wanted to do. Um, I never went to any trade fairs during school, nothing like that. Um, but I graduated college and then I moved to New Hampshire and I got a job with my degree. I lasted about 9 months. I was stuck in a cubicle. I had no windows. I was really miserable. um, and I asked two people that I have a lot of respect for, my father being one of them, if you could pick any trade right now that's booming, what would you pick? And HVAC came up with both of those people. So at the time, I basically talked to the job that I was at and I said, look, I want to pursue some classes. Is it all right if I do this? And they were okay with it. So I went to a local school here and I got my EPA and I just started knocking on doors, walking into places. I probably walked into about 20 to 30 companies. Nobody wants to
Jeez.
hire a girl. Nobody wants to hire somebody without experience on top of that. Um, so that was really difficult. But finally, the shop that I just left, they hired me, and I was there for this entire time. And it was a great learning experience. I was installed for about 2 years, transitioned into service, and yeah, so here I am.
Well, and what's interesting when you say that is no one wants to hire someone with no experience.
It's really hard. It's really hard.
But I would say, and we've seen a bit of a shift of that in some parts of the industry. So where I am on the wholesale distribution side, I see a bit of the different inner workings of a contractor's business than someone does when they're just walking in trying to get a job, especially if you were green. And a lot of guys were always like, no, we got to have somebody with experience. The problem was a lot of times the experience that guys have, may look good on paper, but in a lot of cases they really just knew just enough about the brand they were working on to not get in trouble, and they got lucky a whole lot. And they
Yeah.
really weren't always as skilled as they said they were. And over the
Mhm.
last really 5 to 10 years, I've seen a lot more companies now that are focusing on hiring more on attitude with someone that they can train to do things the way they want them to learn how to do them and do it right, as opposed to just going out and headhunting who's supposed to be the top tech that's going to cost a ton of money to get to move, and then find out they really aren't as good as they were advertised.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Um, the I interviewed at about six places before I decided, and the top two places that were, where I had to decide, it was very much. I don't want to say they sold me, but you know what I mean. Like I liked them the most because they reiterated how important it was to have a good crew of people, how they were really focused on building a team, making sure everyone's happy, valuing their employees, just having good ownership in general who just gets it. So yeah, I would agree with that. But it really depends on where you are, and I think, like you said, what your experience level is, but not like you said, it's difficult because if you've only worked on one thing your whole time, then yeah, you're limited on what you know. Yeah, I get what you're saying because I've been to school. I've done a lot of the way I've gotten all my licenses. You meet a lot of people, and I understand what you're saying.
Well, and starting from scratch like you did, saying you were in service 2.5 years. Service is what, not excuse me, not service, but install, where you started for a couple of years. Install is what really gives you the understanding of just what all goes into putting something into place.
Totally.
And I feel like there's a lot of people that go through trade school, come out and they try to immediately go into service. The problem is, even 2 years in a community college doesn't teach you what 2 years of actually having to do install teaches you in terms of
It does not.
what it's like with the situations you're going to run into.
Yeah.
It's one thing to diagnose something in a lab that was set up for you to find a specific problem. It's a whole different ball of wax when you go out there and you're halfway, you're laying on your side in an attic and it's 140 degrees and you're trying to
Yep.
you're trying to keep the sweat out of your eyes while you watch this thing and see if it blinks 5 times or not.
There's definitely a certain level of resilience that you develop over time, and my old shop, I got to give credit where credit's due. They were very good about hiring people without experience. They were willing to give people a chance, and for that reason alone, you go through a lot of people. And there are a lot of people that come in and they say, oh yeah, I want to do this, and they don't even last 6 months, for a variety of different reasons. Just, the lights are on but no one's home. You can't show up, it's too hot, it's too cold, who knows, I don't want to try hard enough, it's too hard, I don't want to stay here, just, yeah, there's definitely a level of resilience that you have to develop over time. And when you have somebody who doesn't want to put in the effort to work hard and learn what they need to learn, then it's kind of just, it's almost feels like a waste of time, and then it's even harder because you've been with this person and you've poured all this time and energy into them for 4+ months, and then it's like, okay, I gotta go on to the next one now.
No, that's the truth. What was really your first experience walking in there and an installation on the first time? Like, what was the first thing you ever went on an install for?
um at the time, there was it was I think like an assisted living facility type place, and they had a bunch of split systems that we were doing. So I was there, and I was also, where was the other place I was at? I can't recall now. Oh, it was a big job near an airport, for a facility. They manufacture something for the government. I couldn't tell you now.
Which is just the way the government wants it.
Yeah. But that was really what hooked me, because all I did was fit pipe for 9-10 months. It took us about a year on that job to get that done. It was a complete new space. They were relocating from one town to another. They had, we got to work with the infinity piping system. So that was really interesting. They had compressed air, nitrogen, going through those to all these little machines. So it was big 2-inch lines coming in to the spaces that reduced down to each of the machines. And then we had, I think it was one boiler that came from the old facility and 2 new ones that got put in. So they were staged.
Were you piping steam or water?
Water. We did have to have plumbers on this job because my shop no longer has plumbers, but some of the stuff you can do. But what really got me hooked was, at the time I was still a trainee, but I got to demo all of the old gas pipe on the roof, and we had set all new rooftop units. So getting to run the 300 and thread all of that pipe, I was totally hooked. I'm like, I love doing this. I could do this all day long. So yeah, that was really a big transitioning point for me at that point. And then trying to think. Yeah, and then I was at that little place for a little bit, and from there I got put with another tech who, I'm still really good friends with to this day. He taught me a lot. He was basically like in charge of a lot of install, and we got to do some really big walk-ins, um, just line sets, refrigeration work, whatever the customers needed, we did it. So yeah.
I never got to use an automatic pipe threading machine. I learned everything I knew about threading gas pipe with a hand threader. It was still rigid.
I did my house with the hand threader, but
It was one of those when you're threading pipe for a job, you end up on that one. It's like you just have to get in the rhythm and stay in the rhythm, because if you stop, like your body's like, we're done.
Yep.
You're like, all right, how much do I have to thread today? Let's line up everything that's got to get threaded and just get it over with, and then we'll just put it together tomorrow.
I get thread pipe all day. There's just something about it, man. It's very satisfying to my brain.
No, it makes sense, because I know that feeling. We did a lot of stuff like that. We also did a ton of radiant floors.
Don't have any experience with that.
Where we were in North Carolina, in order to deal with water in any kind of capacity for heating and cooling, you have to have an H1 license. So my dad was one of the few people that had an H1 in the mountains of North Carolina. So, there'd be all these massive multi-million-dollar custom homes everywhere that they wouldn't pay us what we wanted to do, the full heating and air, but the heating and air company that got it would have to come pay us to do the radiant floor, because they couldn't do them. We put in so many radiant floors for houses that have absolutely horrendous duct systems that I wanted to butcher and mutilate every time I went into these houses, and just wasn't allowed to go fix it. But that was where the bulk of really my water experience came from. I never had we did some boilers and stuff like that, but I never did big boiler water piping or steam piping. I think the biggest boiler I ever worked on was probably 750,000 BTUs, maybe. Which, that's still a big boiler, but nothing like...
Yeah, I was going to say, that's still a big boiler.
But I go and I look at what guys are doing on the commercial sides now, when they're putting in these multi-million BTU boilers, and I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. It's like, there's days I wish I could have gotten to work on something like that just to have had the experience.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that my new shop will be able to get my hands on some more boiler work. But yeah, that's... I've done some installs here and there, but it's hard when you work for a small shop, because one person's got to be in charge of stuff, but then the other person's got to be out doing the service work. So
yep,
you got to make it work.
It's there's the pluses and minuses of the small shop versus the big shop. There always will be, and always has been. The camaraderie of the small shop is a lot of times very enjoyable, but at the same time, all of you kind of get stuck doing what you're best at, and sometimes it's hard to have crossover and get to learn other things too.
Exactly.
What allowed you, at what point was it, able for you to move into service, and how was the experience getting to move and transition to that?
I actually really had to fight to get moved into service. Yeah, it was not... I had asked for a long time, and I felt like it kept getting rejected. Kind of what we had discussed prior, when somebody's really good at something, they want to keep you where you are because you're doing really good, and that's, you make everybody else's life easy. But, I learned pretty quickly that if you want to progress and, you want to make more money and you want to be more valuable and blah, 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 you have to learn how to work service. So the actual transition was not as difficult as I would have thought it would have been. But then again, I've only worked at one shop, so my experience is very limited. I mean, who's to say now when I go somewhere new? But the different thing at my shop is, being that we were small, we really didn't have a separate install and service department. They would put guys on installs and jobs, and that's what you would do, but you were still on the on-call list. So, once I had my gas license and I was ready to go, it's like, you're on call. In the summertime, you were on call. So my frustration really is what pushed me to say, hey, I want to learn service, because it's really, really frustrating when you have zero experience with it. You can barely understand an electrical schematic, and you get sent on a call, and you're constantly having to call your service manager or another guy and say, hey, can you help rescue me? Because I have no clue what I'm doing right now. So once I was transitioned, I feel like because of my experience in install, you pick up on things pretty quickly because you see, oh, hey, that's not supposed to be like that.
Correct.
Or, if this was done this way, then it would have been 10 times easier to do this work to repair it. Or, I can think of 100 other things.
No, that's completely why I said like being in install first really sets the stage for you to learn service, because you at least understand where and what should be where. You may not understand all of the complete inner workings, but you're like you just said, like that's not supposed to be that way.
Yeah.
So when you're doing like walkthroughs on a service call before you even get to diagnosing, you can kind of look through and see
You pick up on things
potentially
right
what's
away.
going on. Yep.
Yeah. You notice things right away. You look at it without even knowing what the issue is, and you just go, well, that's not supposed to be like that. And then you dive into it, and sometimes that's the issue or it's part of it, and sometimes it's not. But yeah, it definitely gives you a really good basis to build off of. And you know, another thing too that I learned pretty quickly is never be embarrassed to call tech support. They are your friend. I've forged a lot of relationships. I've saved a lot of people's phone numbers in my phone that have saved me when I've been stuck somewhere at 9:00 at night and it's freezing to death and you got to get it up and running. So yeah, just you learn a lot from that you might have not learned if you hadn't made a phone call. So.
Well, and talking about tech support, I think one thing that's also important to know about when you're calling tech support, one of the nightmare calls that those guys face, and this is coming from the distribution side where I've watched the tech guy take the phone call and get absolutely frustrated by the person in the field. And a lot of it's because the tech guy's going to have to ask you questions that you already know the answer to. And then a lot of times the contractor out in the field will get frustrated with the question. But it's like, look, man, he's not the one sitting in front of it. If he doesn't have this basis of information that, yes, you've already done the diagnosis to find out up to this point, but if he doesn't know what steps you went through to get to where you are, it's very hard for a tech guy to help you. And I think
gotta be kind.
You got to be kind because, and they're not asking questions to seem redundant or anything. They're asking questions to try to be able to help you, and sometimes you got to take a breath because you're frustrated the fact that you had to call tech support anyway at times. And it's like, just remember, they are trying to help. Like, your attitude toward it is the way most people should look at it, but they don't always.
Yeah. Yeah.
The nicer you are with them, the more they're going to help you. I think one of the funny things is I've also heard there's so many times where the guy calls tech support and he's embarrassed that he had to call tech support. So in his defense of being embarrassed that he called tech support, he has to run through his entire resume of his HVAC career.
Yeah. Meanwhile, there's 10 other people waiting because they need help. And you're giving your life story.
He's like, I got to tell this tech guy so he knows I'm not a dumbass. It's like, most tech guys at this point hopefully assume you're not a dumbass. But if you've got to give him your whole life story, more than likely, unfortunately, you just might be a dumbass. Not saying it to be mean, but that's the funny thing you see.
You need to stop with the whole pride thing, if you're going to be doing that, because things are changing so quickly in the industry every day. And if you are working on every brand, which we work on every brand, all the things, there are so many times where I go up to something and I'm like, I don't even, what? Like, it's just, okay, open up the manual, Google search, like figure it out, just.
Yep.
You need to have patience, and you're never going to know everything. And you might know something the way that it was installed or the way that it was designed 5 years ago, and they probably just changed everything 2 years ago. And you didn't even realize
I'm sure they did. And now they're changing it all again.
Yeah. So you can't know everything. Got to be humble.
I never would have imagined that we would be navigating this many industry changes this fast when I got into it. Right when I got into wholesale, we were finishing up, 410 becoming the main refrigerant. Yeah, I was still selling dry charge units for people that just could not let 22 die. And there's still plenty of people that wish 22 had never died. I understand.
Well, there's still plenty of people out there that are willing to keep paying for 22.
Oh, I know. So. But like, I never would have thought there would have been this many changes this fast. And then we've got more commercial regulations changing. We've got more residential regulations changing. It's crazy trying to keep up with all of it. And it's hard enough trying to keep up with it from a distributor side, trying to get it to the contractor so they know about it. from the top all the way down. It's becoming a much more fast paced industry than I imagined it would be when I moved to a different part of it 15 years ago.
Yeah. I think that kind of segues off of, what we were talking about earlier about how, you know, there's always going to be something new and
Hmm.
you're never going to know everything, and you got to just you got to be open to learning something new all the time. And I feel like, when you talk to the old heads of the world who've been doing this for so long, you make jokes about beer can cold and it wasn't like that and this was the best and who cares about global warming, whatever you want to say. But
Yep.
at the end of the day, it's not changing. It's always gonna be something new and something different. So you either gotta get on the bus and be willing to ride it, or just don't get on. No.
What was the first major headache you had on the service call? Or was it day one? Or did it take like 6 months and you just run into something and you're like, I am stumped.
I'd have to really think about that because there have been quite a few. Unfortunately.
It happens. That's how we learn.
Oh man, I so many. I feel bad because all that comes to my head is mess ups, and then having to go fix mess ups. Um, that shouldn't be the case. I
Well, I was gonna say, let it stew. It may
I'll
come
think
out.
about it.
Yeah.
I'll think about it.
When did you really have the kind of aha moment that you made the right decision going to the trades? Like, how long did it take you to realize, like, yeah, this is really what I enjoy doing?
Honestly, that first big job that I was on, seeing the speed at which I got better at fitting pipe, and how, the day just flies by. You're not staring at the clock. You know, I never had to ask for a raise. They were always very good to me in that essence. They saw me working hard. They saw me going to school. Historically, going back to when I went to university, I I remember going to my college counselor and she's like, you need to declare a major. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do. She's like, you need to declare, otherwise you can't keep going. And, I don't feel that way when I'm sitting in the classroom learning about refrigeration. I didn't feel like that when I went for my refrigeration license. I didn't feel like that when I was in my gas classes. I didn't mind studying. So just reading and watching and doing and being part of something that I'm actually genuinely interested in was when I'm like thinking to myself, okay, yeah, I want to do this, and I'm pretty good at it. So why not keep going?
I had kind of the same experience in college. My first, I would say, year and a half, really my first 2 years. It was never that I wasn't smart enough. It was never anything. I just wasn't mentally ready to say, yes, this is what I'm doing, or even figure it out. And hell, I have 2 degrees. One of them I don't use at all. Like, I have a history degree. I don't teach history. I talk about the history of our industry, but that was something I started. I thought I was going to be a history professor when I was a kid, and learned real quickly that I was not going to be able to learn 2 other languages, written and reading, to be able to do it. I learned that in college, that I had to do that, and I said, well, I guess I won't be a history professor then.
Yeah,
Um,
a lot of reading
I
in
ended
that
up
field.
well, I can do the reading. It was having to do it in 2 other languages and be able to write those other 2 languages and speak them that was going to be the problem.
Yeah,
Um, I suck at English half the time,
yeah.
but I ended up in a business class for entrepreneurial business, and I fell in love with it because it wasn't just business management. And
Mhm.
I watched my dad struggle at times running a business because he had no formal business education, and I was like, well, an entrepreneurial business degree would be able to help me help dad,
Yeah,
because the beauty of it with entrepreneurship versus just a business degree was I had to learn what it took to start a company and to get it to somewhere. I always felt like the management classes I took so much of the time were just focused on maintaining status quo. And I was like, well, you can't grow a business if you're just maintaining status quo. You've got to figure out what actually drives it to get bigger, or what caused it to go backwards.
yeah, and you have to be able to, look at your specific business from,
Correct.
a more zoomed in lens and take what it is that they're teaching you, because they don't know what you're doing or what you're trying to do. They're just teaching you, a broad spectrum of things. And be able to take those tools and apply them to your own life and what it is that you're trying to do. And I think that's really difficult for a lot of people in more areas than one.
You're on this journey now. You've decided you're taking a leap. It's the first kind of big career move. I can tell that you're very fond of the place that you had been, and this was probably not the easiest decision. But what led you to really just say, it's time to do something different?
Yeah, it was really hard for me. Um, it wasn't really just one thing. It was a bunch of small things that kind of added up over time. Um, One of the hardest things I think was, I don't have any family here, so I have to travel to visit all my family. And when you're on call once a month, twice a month, it's really hard to do that.
Yeah.
And then have a life outside of your job. So just kind of getting burnt out a little bit in that essence. And then even when things got a little bit better, you can't really erase that. You always have that feeling, if you will. That I feel that because they were so good about hiring new, inexperienced young kids, or people, could have been adults. Um, I lost the people that were teaching me, because then I became that person. And, obviously awesome. You're learning and you're doing all these great things, but, it's the same stuff over and over again, the same reversing valve change out, the leak check on the rooftop unit, the same change the TXV, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, and obviously that's the job,
Yep.
but I feel like I've never been the type of person to be comfortable and then just sit there and be good with that. I want to do more. I want to learn more. I really wanted to get my hands on some larger equipment. I had always been asking, I'd like to work on some more boilers. I'd like to learn how they operate. The lack of opportunity to do that. So, yeah, I mean, it was a compilation of all of those things. But at the end of the day, I just think I got bored. It's just, you wake up in the morning and you want to go to work and you're like, I remember waking up and being like, oh, I'm so excited to go do this and try this. And I wonder where I'm going to go today. And I just kind of lost that. And I was like, man, I know what I like. I know that I like what I'm doing. So that's kind of what pushed me.
No, and I completely understand that. That was a lot of what led me to make the last career move before this one. Was I really wanted the opportunity to be able to learn things that I just didn't have access to get to learn to further, my own, book of knowledge about the industry and being able to help people and solve different problems and do different things. So I completely understand, where you're coming from with that. And I have great fondness for the place that I was at for a very long time before I was at my last place. And, now I'm looking for, kind of the next thing that really gets me excited about the industry at the same time. One of the other things you said that really kind of has inspired this decision is, your potential opportunity to go after your plumbing license.
Yeah.
Which I'm guessing for you, that is what kind of would tie boiler work and HVAC are all together.
Yeah. And, you never know what's going to happen in the future, and maybe this sounds horrible to say this, but, I don't want to be 50 years old, killing myself, climbing a roof ladder every day to do service work, like
Yep.
having a good education and carrying your licenses, it's critical if you want to progress and, if you want to be able to open up your opportunities down the road and have those. So yeah, I think about that.
What's been your proudest moment of your career so far?
I'd probably say there have been so many little ones. If I could pick two things, I would say probably having a service call that somebody else has been to. This is just an example. And, they've been there for a long time. And then you go up to it and you figure it out in 15 minutes. That
Fresh
feeling,
eye syndrome.
right? Or just that feeling of being like, I couldn't have done that 4 years ago.
Yep.
Time flies, and just that feeling of confidence and thinking to yourself, I did that. I found that. I learned about this through my blood, sweat, and tears, literally. And I'm able to do that. And just that feeling of confidence and goodness that it gives you. But also, if I had to pick like something specific, I would say when I completed my mass refrigeration license. That was a lot of schooling for me. It was a lot of driving into mass every day, and a lot of studying for that test because that test was very hard. And I'm very proud to say that I passed it the first time. So
Nice.
yeah.
I know plenty of people that have not passed their test the first time. Maybe not up there, but down here, most definitely.
Yeah.
So looking ahead, where do you see, or where would you like to see yourself in 5 years, post, transition and through a lot more stages of growth? Where do you want to get to, or where do you like to see yourself?
That's a loaded question. You're really hitting me with these.
It's my job. Literally, it's the only job I have right now.
I would say, kind of piggybacking off of that confidence comment, having that same confidence when it comes to plumbing. I'm really excited to learn about that aspect of things. So, learning about that stuff and knowing about it and being able to utilize it. Being successful at my job, which hopefully will be where I'm going on Monday. Just continuing to learn. Yeah, I mean, you never know what's going to happen in 5 years, but yeah, just I think as long as I can keep myself from being bored, then I'll be good.
I think one thing my dad has always said this, which was part of what helped me in some ways see that I wanted to continue a career in this field, besides the fact that it just was put in my blood, was that one of the things he loved about heating and air conditioning was that in most cases, every day was something different. And he said he had been in like big industry and stuff like that, and maintenance management and other different things. And he said, a lot of those things, like I could build a process and fix it, and then that's what it was. It was the same thing every other day. Just follow the process, it's going to work. He said when I would go out and deal with refrigeration or heating and air and stuff like that, it was always something different. And he loved that HVAC is truly a master of the trades because it involves a little bit of everything, whether it's electrical to plumbing to HVAC itself. It's all these different little things that always allow you to kind of have something else to not keep you so bored every single day.
No, I completely agree with that. And I think that's why I really took to service the way that I did, because, you're always doing something different every day. You never know where you're going to end up and what you're going to come across. Just having that variety is really good, I feel, at least for somebody like me.
Well, and speaking of that variety and craziness in service and on jobs, everyone's got their one just crazy job story. I like to call them crawl space confessions on this show. But what's the wildest, most unexpected thing you've encountered on a job?
Besides all of the regular gross things?
Besides all the regular gross things.
I just figured out the answer to the other question for you. The wildest thing I've ever encountered on a job. I don't know why I'm maybe, well, I guess when it comes to, depending on which job you're on and how big it is, when you're on the bigger ones, sometimes dealing with engineers can be difficult because they have no idea of how things.
There's a confession. I had to deal with the engineer.
Yeah. Like, hey, listen, I get what we're trying to accomplish here, but if we did it this way, it would probably be a lot better for service down the road. And, I'm going to be the one here doing it. So I think we should do that. Nope. It needs to be that. Okay. So dealing with that, I feel like that's craziness in itself. Another job I just finished a while ago, they were screaming and crying that the makeup air units had to be started, and it's winter at this point. And I said, you don't even have all of the garage doors on. There are no garage doors. So, but no, it needed to be started. So I had to go there on a Saturday and start these units up. And I was basically heating the outside of the world So that was pretty ridiculous. There's so many things. I mean, just, yeah, I mean, there's a lot, especially dealing with all of the other trades, and everybody's got to get in somewhere when you're in a tight space and trying not to fight. And, yeah, there's a lot. But it's definitely difficult when you're always the only girl. I kind of just put the sweatshirt hood up and go about my day. So,
Well, and that comes with its own set of frustrations and challenges that I'm sure you face, just like any other female technician has, is just earning the right to be respected. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it happens.
yeah, there's been some times where I've had to assert myself in a way that perhaps I wouldn't have liked to have done it that way, but I feel like a lot of times you just have to, you
Yeah.
know. And then they remember the next time you see them. And I hate to cuss, but then they don't fuck with you again. So
That's okay. We're all adults here. So outside of the craziness, if you had just the dream job site to go work on, like what would the dream project be that you would get to go do?
probably the exact first one that I told you about. Um, you just you get to pipe all the time, and you get to pipe all the things.
It's like I'm putting in a big ass boiler and I'm running a lot of pipe. Today's gonna be a
Yeah,
great
pretty
day.
much. I mean, I'd love that. That would be the dream. Or being up on a roof and, you know, running lines or doing whatever the heck it is you're doing, or, you know, even troubleshooting stuff. Just being alone in the outdoors, nobody bothers me. Going about my day. That's really the dream.
Leave me up here on the rooftop. I'll be fine, thanks.
Exactly. Not having to deal with the homeowner. I don't mind having to do that once in a while, but it's just not for me.
As we kind of start closing this out, I always like to talk about, community collaboration and kind of giving back to the industry that's made us all who we are. And one of those things that our industry thrives on, obviously, is mentorship and collaboration, which I know you've talked about, some of that. But who's been, a real mentor or role model for you in the field?
I gotta say, the um, the lead tech at my former shop. Um, he'll probably listen to this, so I know you're listening. Um, he really just is so patient. I can't even stress that. He is just so patient. Never got angry, even in the beginning when I was just making mistakes all the time. Gave you a task, gave you the time to do the task, came back, okay, good job. Now you're going to do this. Very methodical person. Never cuts corners, always goes above and beyond. Um, if something's not right, he takes the time to fix it and do it right. I learned that. I learned that way. I mean, granted, there have been situations in the past where, maybe you have a project manager or estimator and they say, well, just get it done, just do it this way, just get it done, whatever the reason is. And, you know, that's a very difficult situation to be in, because you as the tech know that you're going to be the one that's blamed if this isn't done correctly, because it's always going to come back to bite you.
Yep.
I mean, we all know that. At some point it will always come back to bite you in the ass. And, having somebody that you can call in those types of situations just to say, what do I do? Do I succumb to the pressure and do it wrong and then have to deal with it later? Or do I do it right? And do I put my foot down and do I say, I'm not going to do that? Just those types of in the field lessons, because it's not always just, hey, learn how to fix this or learn how to do this. A lot of times there's a lot of communication that needs to happen to get things to go smoothly. And, if you want to be better and you want to, if you want to be the person that goes to the job and has the plans and is telling everybody what to do, then you have to be able to have those communication skills and be able to assert yourself. And a lot of people just don't have that.
No, they don't.
I took what I learned and I took what he taught me and his influence, and I kind of molded that into my own thing, which has gotten me to where I am. And he was a huge influence on that. There are a lot of guys out there, I think, that just kind of, or companies, I should say, that just kind of throw you into the fire, which to a certain extent, that was how I learned a lot. And some people are fine with that. Like I'm pretty resilient and I'm good with that. A lot of people are not. Having somebody to kind of, hold your hand when you need your hand held a little bit, but also being like, all right, time to push you is really important, I think. And he gave me those opportunities. So yeah.
I truly will say any woman that is doing what you're doing is pushing boundaries in our trade, period. How do you hope that your journey and will help inspire and support the next generation of not just HVACR professionals, but also of women professionals in the trade that are service and install technicians?
Sometimes I hate this kind of question because, I'm just like one fish. There's so many others out there and I'm very humbled, but I will say I think visually seeing it is really important. Like I said, I've been doing this almost 6 years now, and that weirdness that comes from, meeting somebody new at something, and they, of course, they ask you, "Oh, what do you do?" And, "Oh, this is what I do." And, "What?" you know, um kind of erasing that stigma and just, I don't know, making it normal. It's just a job, and I like what I do, and I want to be good at it. And I hope that at least in schools and, maybe even universities or parents, they'll kind of see that and they won't just automatically think, "Oh, well, she's a girl, she can't do that."
Well, and I think the social media side of all these things, but I have to bring that up because that's how almost every single person that's been on the show has been because of some form of connecting through social media and our and networks of our trade.
Totally.
And I think, whether you have 2,000 followers or 200 or 2 million, there's always the chance that you putting something up that's cool and just showcasing the industry is going to get seen by some little girl, and she's going to go, "Oh, I could do that."
Yeah, because I really do feel that there is a stigma, and I think it's getting better. Social media is really helping with that. But and there's also been, I think, at least where I live, there's been a bunch of nonprofit and community efforts that are really taking off to encourage, young people coming out of high school to think about pursuing a trade. Just having a job fair, having a trade fair, something like that, to where they can talk to somebody and just kind of get a feel of what it's like is really important, because it's totally new and they don't know, and oftentimes their parents are not in the field. There's a
Nope.
huge group of people out there who they don't know anything. And so it's like, where do I bring my kid to talk about maybe going and being an electrician? um, so I think that, and then if somebody asks you about something and you take the time to answer the question correctly, I think a lot of times when people think about being an HVAC tech or a refrigeration tech, like, well, you're crawling into an attic and you have to deal with, I don't know, gross stuff, and it's hot and it's this and it's that. Yeah, it is those things sometimes. I'm not going to sit here and lie. It definitely is those
Oh,
things.
it definitely is.
But there's so much opportunity out there to find the right company for you that works on the right stuff for you, that, piques your interest on things that you really want to work on. I am fortunate that my company was pretty much all commercial, like, industrial type work, because I fit right in, and I was like, oh man, I never want to work residential. I don't want to do it. I learned pretty quickly that's not what I want to do. I probably wouldn't be doing this if I was working residential. But having the opportunity to work on a roof and just kind of do my own thing and work on some bigger equipment, I really enjoy it. Do I like being in a walk-in all the time? Not really, but the work is mixed, so I'll do it if I have to. There's definitely something for everybody out there. And I think erasing that stigma of it being gross or you don't get paid enough, or I think at one point maybe I was embarrassed to say this is what I do, and I'm not anymore. I'm very proud of where I've gotten to this point in my life. I'm glad that I have a career where I wake up in the morning and I'm excited to go to work, even on the bad days. So, and it's also given me the financial freedom to do the things that make me happy in my life. And that was something that my degree couldn't give me. So I think that's important to mention.
No, and I completely agree with that. A lot of people don't realize the kind of career you can build out of this because, yes, when you first get started, sometimes the pay is not always the best. But it's also something that as you learn it and you develop it, no one can take away what you've learned how to do with your hands. They
Exactly.
cannot take that from you. maybe the company you're at's not the right one, you can go utilize those skills somewhere else. What advice would you give to someone that's considering HVAC as a career, especially, and I'll say especially young women, just because of your experiences? What's something you would say, look, this is something you should consider doing, even though you may have never thought this was something you would do?
I would say finding a good shop where you're the right fit, and never letting anyone at your shop take away an opportunity from you. Always advocate for yourself. Always don't be afraid to be uncomfortable. Never be afraid to make mistakes. It's everybody's got to start somewhere. And, it doesn't matter if you're a girl or a guy. We all have to start somewhere, and we all know what we're good at. So yeah. And realizing the importance of education. So
I think another thing that's lost on us when we're younger at times too is you don't want to be the smartest one in the room. If you're in a place where you feel like you're the smart one in the room, it's time to go somewhere else. Because I know sure as hell I'm not the smartest one in the room. You have to get in those situations where you have to be challenged in order to grow. And sometimes it's a lot tougher challenge than you thought it was going to be. But if you're not putting yourself in those situations, you won't progress and you won't grow. You have to constantly be pushing to get to the next thing until you find what truly is like, you know what, this is it. But until then, you got to push and you got to grow and get where you want to be. I'll close you with this one. I'll stop hitting you with all these pressing questions. If you could start a movement or initiative to give back to our community, what would it be?
A movement or initiative to give back to my community.
Or I'll even say if there's a specific one you would support or want to be a part of, what would it be?
Locally where I'm at, there is a gentleman that I've been following online. He started a nonprofit. It's called Bring Back the Trades. Never met him in person, just seen what they've been doing online, and the speed at which he built up this group of people and has been handing out scholarships to anyone really, for any trade, has been really remarkable. I think recently they got Mike Rowe to do an event with them, which who doesn't love Mike Rowe? So that has been really phenomenal. But if I could do something for myself, I would say, if there were any schools locally or institutions anywhere where they were trying to look for people to speak from their real life experiences, and because seeing it is different than being told, right? If you see a girl in her 20s on a stage saying, you can do this too, they're going to believe that versus, I got an email or I'm going to go to a trade fair. I think seeing it is really important. So being able to contribute in that way, I'd be more than happy to do stuff like that.
Honestly, some of the funnest stuff I've done on this side of the industry is get to do stuff to help high school kids and community college kids. That has been some of the coolest, funnest stuff I've ever gotten a chance to be a part of. So I encourage you and anybody that listens to this, go and get involved with local schools in any way you can if you can help the trades, because it means more to the future of all of us than any of us ever even understand. So, Laura, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with me and the trade crew. Where can everybody connect with you and find you on social media and follow your story?
On my Instagram. You guys should all follow me on my Instagram. I try to post more, but I'm busy and I have 50,000 things going on in my life. But my handle is HVAC.Dynamo, Dynamo. I'm usually posting a lot of my stories, just kind of the daily stuff that I deal with. Any weird service stuff that I come up, I usually post it on there. But I just have my Instagram.
Everybody go find and follow Laura, which you'll be able to find her from the show as well. If you're not following HVAC R&D online, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at HVAC.R&D. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn, Trade Hounds, and Facebook as the HVAC R&D Podcast. Thank you for listening to the show on your favorite platform, whatever it may be. Please follow, like, and rate the show. Leave me a review. If I suck, let me know, and we'll figure out how to fix it. Share the show with your friends and your trade crew. Please help me continue to push this message to everybody to help support the trades. Don't forget to go check out HVACRD.com and visit the swag shop. If you want to work with me, you know how to do that. Have a great week. Have a great weekend, trade crew. I'll catch y'all soon. Peace.